Where did you get into the idea of fauna in the city, which is what this book is basically about?
Well, two things. I mean, one, this particular novel started back before I had moved to Toronto with visiting and staying with friends in Riverdale and taking that subway ride where you bust out at the tunnel and suddenly you're looking down on a forest with a river running through it. Highways, train tracks, but a forest. And I always just found that so exciting and wonderful. And also it really fed my imagination, especially if I'd be here in winter and I could see some campsites. You can't see those when all the foliage is out. But you start to realize, oh, you know, there are people living down here, winter and summer alike. And just thinking about the human beings and the other animals that are living down there in that valley and just the sort of teeming with life. But then also I tend to orient toward animals wherever I am. If I'm in the country, I'm looking for them, and if I'm in the city, I'm looking for them.
Probably the most apparently damaged person in the book, I'm guessing, is Lily, who's living on the street. She has the dog.
Which is her saving grace.
Lots of attitude, for which she has absolutely lots of reason for.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the book, she's in downtown Toronto early in the morning, and she's
picking up mostly dead birds, some still living birds. And I think that's where that character first came from. Before I even moved here, a friend mentioned to me how many birds get killed flying into over 1 million every year in the GTA. Many of them into the towers. And there are people who go down there and look for the living ones, and so they try to rehabilitate them and take them, because oftentimes they don't, even if they live, they get trapped, because then they, you know, if they're night flyers, they're trapped by what happens with the glass at night. If they're day flyers, either way, they're in big trouble if they end up in those corridors. And so people will rescue them and take them out and set them free. But then many of the birds they find are dead. So what do you do with those bodies? Is there some way to honor them as well? And way back then I got the image of some kind of marginal teenager going around doing this. And this will often happen with characters, that they're there in an image long before you know who they are. And so as I started to think about the book, Lily first came out of that scene, and it's her first scene. It doesn't always work that way, but it did there.
I'm not even sure how to say Edal?
Everyone has their own pronunciation, and I actually had to phone Scotland to talk to some of the people there, because she's named after the otter in Ring of Bright Water. So it's Edel. They say Edel.
You tell me about her, because she's kind of on hold at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, when you think about when you're going to tell a story, you think, when does it start and when does it stop? And this one, really, the main time frame is a week. And it had that sense of kind of urgency about it. And I also just had a sense of, the wrecking yard at the center, the wrecking yard in the valley. And then people drawn to this place who are at a point where their life is, breaking down or breaking open, or they've all kind of come to that place. Because that just makes, it makes for a better story.
And
people are ready for change, right?
Yeah. Everybody in the book.
Yeah, Edel's she's come to a point with her work because she's a wildlife officer, and a certain amount of her work is quite heartbreaking, that she's busting these people who are smuggling animals into, live animals often, or animal parts. And the feelings that I have around that kind of stuff, and seeing what human beings are capable, not in our best light. And just thinking about doing that job and what the day that it would be too much, but then also other stuff in her family background, the way that sometimes that happens in life, that when it rains it pours. Yeah.
Tell me about Guy.
Yeah, so Guy, I think for me, he's a leader, and he's in some ways that having the wrecking yard there is this kind of sanctuary, this place that's about, it's about wreckage, but it's also about salvage, right? It's about and it's also a graveyard of places, which is appropriate, because there's a kind of honoring. He's kind of he's about honoring people and creatures, whether they're alive or dead, honoring lives, And somebody pointed out to me, and it's funny the things that people teach you about your own book, and someone pointed out to me, actually I think this was Ann Collins, my editor and publisher, she said, he's the one who's had proper love, so it makes sense that he's the one at the heart that they come to. Because actually the rest of them have had to kind of make do without any proper love until the book starts.
And they become this kind of family, for lack of a better word.
It's not really reflective of my life. I don't just take in anyone who comes along. I don't know if Guy does either. I think he recognizes the kind of souls that are going to thrive in the world. But he has an openness to him that just grew out of thinking about his character. He has his own kind of lovely personality. He's a certain kind of leader that is very, very rare. Very rare. Benevolent. He's a benevolent creature.
And he also understands wounded.
Yeah.
Wounded animals.
Instinctively, yeah.
And he just knows to draw them both in.
Yeah, and he also understands the power. This is not something that I imposed upon the book, but he understands the power of story. That this is one of the best ways that we connect to one another, that we create community, and that we heal, and that we try and understand life, right? Through stories, through shared stories. So whether he's giving someone a book to read, think about what you're doing when you say to someone, I loved this book, I want you to read it. Or being read aloud to when it's someone who can do it well, the magic of that.
The book is Fauna. I've been speaking with the author Alissa York, and Fauna, the novel, is published by Random House of Canada.